All right. Hey, good afternoon, good evening to some of you, good morning perhaps. My name is Dan Freilich. I am with Dell Technologies. I am on the Culture, Diversity, and Inclusion team, and I'm super happy to be here today. I've got a really amazing panel here that's going to be joining me here in just a couple of minutes, talking through all things how to grow your ERG. This space is a whole lot bigger than I was in last year, so and we have the added element of live streaming. So love that here for us. But with that said, I'm going to bring up Linnea Johnson here first. And we also have MJ and Josh. All right, let's get started, shall we? Maybe. Okay, here we go. All right, so listen, we're not working here. All right, well, today we're going to be talking about kind of, like I said, all things ERGs, right? Talking through kind of the journey that Dell has had here over the last 3-ish years, however long this pandemic.
100.
Right, time is relative. It's difficult. It's a strange time, right? I mean, we were in person almost fully, right? Overnight, we went to a remote type setting. And then here we are back. I know some of us are hybrid, whatever that means for folks, whether that's 1 to 10 days in office, who knows? But when you're trying to manage an employee resource group, that makes things very difficult, right? So we're going to talk about some of the ways that Dell has gone about tackling that challenges, how Pride has gone about doing that, and talk about some of those wins, and how maybe you all can join in some of those wins as well, right? All right, so we had this Menti here. We were gonna ask you why you're here, right? There's 11 other sessions that are going on right now. There's also another ERG session going on right now. We have some really, really cool things that we've done at Dell Technologies. And we'll talk about this here later on, but ERGs truly are that connective tissue to our culture. And so we want to know why you're here. I don't know if the link is currently working for you. We will be working on that on the back end.
If not, you can just think about it.
Yes. Yes. Internalize it for yourself. What does that mean?
Existential.
Yes.
Why are you here?
Why are you here? You know what, MJ? That's a great point. Let's dive into it, shall we? So there is a certain movie that you may or may not have seen. I'm not trying to get sued today, so we'll just say it's a recent movie that came out, made approximately 1.36 billion
Something
with
like
a B,
Yeah.
about an unnamed doll who goes on this journey through, self-belief and all the magical ways that she had tackled that, right? So obviously for you all, your existential crisis maybe wasn't as deep as death, but what was it for you all? Like, what was that existential crisis that caused you all to want to make some changes?
Our existential crisis also didn't make us that much money, so that's a little different.
Costed
I
us
think
some
we
money,
had to be
actually.
thrifty.
Yeah. So we'll go through a little bit of what happened at Dell Technologies, as Dan was stating earlier. Quick introductions. Linnea and I are co-leads for our North America Pride ERG. We also have day jobs. If you're interested in those, look us up on LinkedIn or come grab us afterward. But as it relates to this topic, we co-lead the North America Pride ERG, and Josh leads our communications team.
I have the fun job. Their job is very boring.
Linnea, do you want to tell us more about our existential crisis?
I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, this is when ERGs shine, right? When things are thrown at us, that there isn't a rule book, there's not a playbook. We need to figure out how do we take what is meaningful connection in person and really translate it to everyone working from home. And we rallied as an ERG, I think. And I think one of the things that is important to say is that ERGs are a place that create community, but they also create places where people can feel safe and heard and feel part of a bigger picture, if you will. And when everyone all of a sudden was working from home, it was like, how do we make sure that that still is there, that that doesn't disappear? And the pandemic hit. This was a legit existential crisis. Like, I don't know how else to describe it other than we needed to quickly rally the troops and figure out how can we make sure that we don't lose the community and connection that we all have. And just to level set with y'all, at Dell, our North America Pride ERG is around 2,500 members. We have 12 chapters, one being remote. And so once the company shifted to predominantly remote, we really had to figure out how can we remove geographic barriers for that sense of community, for that sense of belonging, and using tools like Zoom and Teams to elevate and push them further than we've had to do before. Those impromptu water cooler moments were gone. And I think that making sure that for Pride, that was a big deal because we have people who are in our community that we need to ensure feel that they have a family. And I think that to me was a big push. And what we did is we have a team member experience pillar, we have an amazing comms team, and Dan mentioned connective tissue. And I think that combination really allowed us to elevate and take things that we had previously done in person and do them really well virtually. And we had lip sync battles. I mean, I wish that I could. I think we've had 15. I mean, something outrageous. But we have such talented team members at Dell.
I mean, you name it, we've tried it.
Right?
If you have ideas of other things to try, send them to us.
And we just were like spitballing, like what could work, and let's try lip syncing. Like if people are fans of Drag Race, which if I hope you all are, but lip sync for your life is real. And so we asked our team members, what could we do to have this fun, this sense of community, and they took off. So we've had 15, maybe 20 over the last few years. Michael Dell has popped into a few of them. We've had execs as judges. I think that sense of community, the talent from our Dell team members is just next level. So we had dance parties on Zoom, we had book clubs, we had our town halls, and it just really became a way for the connection to continue, the fun to continue, but we still had more changes to make.
Yeah, and sometimes those changes come, as Dan was stating earlier, with a change in our work behavior, right? So we had established this remote work experience, we'd found new ways to connect with each other, but change was required again. And as we went back to the office and now this hybrid model, we needed to think about whether or not what we had built was still going to work in this new environment. So this was our problem statement slide here. We love slides at Dell Technologies.
You love slides.
I love slides. I love them so much.
But you'll see the Barbie pink infused. We're all in pink today just for y'all.
Don't say the B word. Don't say.
Yeah.
Not to be named movie.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yes. So that was our existential crisis is how do we need to change in a now hybrid work environment?
All right. So you knew there was a problem. You identified the problem, right?
We did.
And here we are. Now it's time to kind of choose that path forward, right? So you were at that crossroads. So for you all, how did you make that decision, stilettos or Birkenstocks?
I think you can figure it out, but
I would ask the audience, stilettos or Birkenstocks? I know the answer, but I mean, stilettos? Clearly.
It depends on the day of the week, I think. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, Birks are coming back. But it does sound silly, but we really had to go back to geography class, right? We had to look at do a deep dive. Where do we have our local chapters? How big were they? What had changed over time? And MJ and I had ideas, but we wanted to make sure that our leadership team was on board, understood, was able to give feedback, that we are all on the same page. And so we kicked off what is forever known as our listening tour. And so one-on-ones, really two-on-ones with all of our leadership team. We pulled in our exec sponsors. We really wanted to understand what was working from a remote, sort of the remote model, but we also needed to do, what did we need to do to improve and pivot to this hybrid approach? And so these sessions, we got feedback. The exec sponsors, we said, what is working? How can the role of exec sponsor evolve, right? Everyone's working from home. All of a sudden it's remote. How do we leverage and work with our exec sponsors to get their value and make sure that they're part of the conversation?
And Linnea, it wasn't just executive sponsors that you went to either, right? I mean,
our whole leadership team.
You had leadership team calls.
The listening tour. We were on tour.
We were on
We
tour.
had a bus.
I think at one point we were like, do we have day jobs or are we just doing one-on-ones
I
now?
feel like we had our own tour bus.
Yeah, we did.
And we were on it together. But I think that's such a big part of it is that, earlier today, like queer joy, part of our leadership team is being in a group that brings queer joy to Dell. And we wanted to make sure that our teammates, our volunteer army, were part of this conversation and could chime in on what was working and what wasn't. And at the end of the day, it's our ERG. And we wanted to make sure that they were part of the conversation and the dialogue, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the things that we decided as we were listening to the feedback from our leadership team was, first, we needed to add fuel to the fire. What had been working so well that we needed to continue? And for us, we have pillars within our Pride ERG. We have 4 core pillars, and then we also had what had been deemed interest groups. And we realized that over this remote work experience, those pillars had become so much of what was connecting us that they needed to have more resources, more budget, and for us to be able to leverage that to bring us together as a North America team, just like we had been when we were remote. We also launched a new Family Pride pillar, which we're really excited about and continuing to see that one grow. So that was the first problem to tackle, is our pillars that are our connective tissue. But as Linnea said, we also had this geography class problem, right? So we're looking across all of the different chapters that we have across North America, and we're realizing that several of these chapters are really struggling from our leadership team. Maybe we don't have enough people, maybe we're not seeing the engagement that we used to. And we realized that some of those that were struggling are actually right next to some of the chapters that are thriving. What can we do to bring those together? And ultimately, as we went back and forth on different options with our leadership team, we realized that we wanted to shift to regional coverage. On the right side is kind of where we landed, where we have a West, Central, East, and Canada team. And then we took this remote chapter, because we're all remote, and we brought it back into the regions. And we established strategic leads to be able to set the vision for each of those regions. And then we tried to set up support teams within each of our local chapters, because we wanted to find balance between your local engagement, where we're giving back to our community and engaging with our local community, but then also continuing to connect as a North America ERG.
All right. So you've chosen your path forward, so to speak, right?
Birkenstocks and the stilettos.
You've
made a choice.
You've chosen your shoe selection.
Yeah.
Change is hard, right? Change is hard for everybody. Even once you've chosen your path forward and you've begun your journey, it doesn't always go as planned.
Best picture of you two, by the way.
Talk about what that was like. Like, how do you tackle the change management element of all this?
Yeah, and I think for those that are in the room or listening online, we're gonna have 2 slides that are a little bit heavier, so bear with us, they're important. This is kind of the center of the conversation. We want you to leave with some of the tools that you can take back to your company, your BRG, ERG, to navigate any change that may be ahead, right? So first, we're gonna talk a little bit about kind of the common pitfalls. It's not an accident that there's an iceberg on the slide, right? First, if you're not paying attention, you may hit one, and it will definitely sink you. Second, 90% of an iceberg is actually underwater. You can't see it. And so something that's important to think about as you're going through change is not just the observable behavior, but also what's happening underneath. This may not be the only change that your team members are going through right now. As we were just discussing, we had been working remotely, and now suddenly I'm moving back into the office. That means that my maybe significant other or my pet, Rupert, is very unhappy with what's happening in life. So I've already got a lot of change happening, and now I'm asking for the team to change again. So you need to think about what may be underneath the surface as kind of an underlying or root cause as you start to navigate some of the change. And then also when we're thinking about common pitfalls, right? A few that I've seen not go so well over time, whether within an ERG or within business, is under communication, which is why we're so happy to have an amazing comms lead here. When you're not telling your audience about what's happening, they may have anxiety, they may be fearful of that change, or sometimes we need to find balance between our short-term wins and long-term goals. Maybe we launch this new thing and we send out a big hurrah, we did it, the journey's complete. Not yet, we just started. There's many, many, many more changes to come, right? And so you need to make sure that you're finding balance between those and communicating it along the way. And ultimately, the biggest thing is also for those that are leading change to be there to listen and to be ready to remove obstacles. Because if you're not removing some of those obstacles, then those are ultimately going to be the icebergs that sent you backward versus that change that you're intending to make.
And I think by doing this, by having these conversations, we normalize talking about really scary things. Like people, to MJ's point, it was this big pivot. We have Rupert, I have twin toddlers who wanted me home all the time, and it changed. And I think, how do you balance all the life stuff with ERG leadership, which is in addition to day jobs? And so I think part of it is we need to normalize talking about that we're all in this together. We are a team, and I think that change needs to be discussed as a team and figured out, not unilaterally, but collaboratively. And so I think that the just normalizing the openness, that culture, I think got us closer to our team in many ways, because I think that I'm hoping it made folks comfortable sharing things with us that they wouldn't necessarily have shared. Yeah. And I think being vulnerable and being open and saying this is working, this isn't, I think helps with when you have big changes and you want to roll them out and you want it to be successful.
Yeah, and I think one of those things too that helped you all out, and as uncomfortable maybe as it was to be doing as many listening sessions and things like that as you did, the insights that you gained from that were really invaluable, right? And I know that Josh is going to talk about that a little bit later on. But
sneak peek.
Yeah, I think I think that's a great point. So let's dive into that change management piece one step further.
Okay, first, I don't know if you'll be able to see this for those online, but we do have our Let's Skate socks, just in celebration of the slide here. And while we have kind of a silly slide, these fluorescent rollerblades, it's important to know that Dan actually did a rollerblade marathon. So if you'd like to talk with him,
that is not important to know.
Q&A session,
One
y'all.
of our
Q&A
questions, audience, ask Dan specifics for the rollerblade marathon, because we want to know.
But I would definitely say, take out your phones, take a picture of this slide, download it from the online assets. This is really the big one to take back to your businesses, your ERGs, BRGs. As you're thinking about change, you have to have a toolkit in order to navigate that. And I had the benefit of having gone through, in my day job, a large-scale reorganization, a difference in how we use tools and technology, and we were able to take some of those best practices and leverage them in the change that we were making within our ERG. And some of those resources are some award-winning methodologies by Dr. John Coder. These 8 rollerblade wheels represent the 8 steps of change that he developed. We wanted to make it a little bit more digestible for you all than just bullets on a slide. But think about when you're thinking about your ERG, how are you going to leverage some of these steps to implement change and be successful? Some of them that stand out to me as we went through this were to build a guiding coalition, right? We just talked about the discussions that we had with our leadership team, many of who are in the room or online, and the feedback that we received helped us to navigate the way that we were going to approach the change. We had to have a strategic vision, and we also had to enlist this volunteer army, right? So as we started to bring together not only our leaders, but our broader ERG members, we started to realize that this journey was not only something that we were excited about, but also that they were bought in on. Because ultimately, it needs to be change for our collective team, and everyone needs to know why we're making change, because it is a challenge. And as I said earlier, making sure that you're removing barriers, that you're creating some of those short-term wins and celebrating them in a communication strategy. And then ultimately, we have to figure out how to sustain that change that we've made. If you've been through change in your life, sometimes you've seen that that benefit of change tends to erode over time. While at first it was great, now we started to slip back into some of our previous behaviors. And when we do that, you kind of need to continue to add a little bit more fuel to that fire to ensure that that change sticks, right? And so again, this is really the takeaway. I think we said, don't leave home without your skates.
Please take your skates.
That's your
skates.
mantra for this session is don't leave home without your skates.
All right, so I don't know where to go with
Especially him.
That's hard. Yeah.
Especially him as he trains for the next marathon.
That was a long time ago, y'all. All right, so you talked about some of those short-term wins and how important that is to kind of celebrate some of those and maintain those for that long term, right? Talk about like some of those short-term wins that you all kind of had in that short term. Like you switched over to this model. What happened next?
I mean, one that comes to mind is when we were thinking of changes, we really looked to our chapters locally that were doing things really well. And how can we take that and celebrate how amazing they're doing and help those chapters or those pillars that needed a boost? And I think part of, being able to see quick wins on how quickly we could roll something out in a new area where we hadn't tried it before. I think, and the reaction and the fact that in this tumultuous, sort of ever-evolving time, there was still some stability, fun, community in pockets where we hadn't been able to do it before.
Yeah, and I think it's also a willingness to kind of test, right? As Lene was saying, we, as we're having conversations with our leadership team, we're hearing these fantastic success stories, right? I'll give a shout out to the East region, not to diminish any others, Central, but the East really took off at a sprint. And so for us, we kind of thought, okay, well, I didn't even think about that. That's amazing. You're already connecting with your, maybe local chambers or local nonprofits. You've got volunteer events that are already on the calendar. What else do you need? Can we do more of that? And have you talked with these other chapters about what got you there? Can we multiply this across the entire North America regional strategy, right? And as we started to build that up more and more, now I'll get to Central, which is where I'm in Austin, Texas. For us, we have our headquarters there. So our bigger problem was we had a barrage of requests. Everybody wanted our time. we had to figure out how to staff that and also do some of the things that we had set in our initial strategy. There are things that you won't anticipate or have seen in advance. So we had to learn how to use our rollerblades to quickly adapt and affect change.
Cool. Love that. All right. Let's talk.
As we put together, sorry, dude. As we put together these slides, we kind of challenged ourselves. We're like, every time that these slides come on, we're going to try not to laugh. But it's hard not to.
All right, so we talked about our culture before, right? And our ERGs being that connective tissue to our culture. So how do you go about implementing some of these pretty large changes, right? Without losing the culture that you built already?
I mean, I think we needed to continue doing what was working. We have these amazing pictures that, when we were fully remote, we were building this sense of community where there is this lack of in-person connection. And our sort of unofficial pride mantra is be yourself. You'll see it on our shirts, and it's part of the Dell culture. And we really wanted to embrace that and cultivate it as we navigated this overhaul. And so from the very first lip sync battle, you'll see Quarantina, the birth of Quarantina came out. Like a silver lining of COVID, if you could find one. But Quarantina is our drag sister, and this is her very first performance with her toilet paper rollers in her kitchen.
Which were rare at the time, so it was special.
It was memorable beyond compare. And I think just that joy and being true to yourself and just the birth of Quarantina, but also being able to, at the dance parties, bring family members. I mentioned that I have twins. They're going to be 4 in October, which is crazy. But you can see this is Eli. I think she was less than a year old. She was like a pride dance baby. I mean, she would be on Zoom, maneuvering the two of them. I mean, it was, as they got bigger, it was a little bit more of a challenge, but they enjoyed being and seeing all the folks dancing over Zoom. Many of you.
We have our fearless leader, Eric Day, in Hamilton.
I was going to say, if you, I feel like a video clip of that would have been amazing. Yeah. But we had Eric, if you're familiar with Hamilton, as the king, and his performance was pretty next level. Yep. MJ, our Top Gun,
me stuck in my guest room.
Yep. Yeah. Flying with Rupert as your co-pilot. I mean, I think it's to leverage and continue with what was working, and I think that that really helped us when we were thinking of new ways to engage virtually. And I have to do a plug, speaking of Quarantina, there is a panel on Thursday at 3, a drag panel that Quarantina will be on. Please check her out there.
And I think if you get there early, there's some swags, some boas
I
maybe.
heard boas and fans. Thursday at 3.
And then, learning about activism too.
Yeah, so activism and importance, but who doesn't want a free boa? So I would definitely hit that up.
All right, so that's how we engage virtually, right?
Yes.
These are all 2020 photos, right?
Yep.
What have we done since then?
And while we're still doing a lot of what worked in 2020, 2021, we are finding new ways to create that community. And so these pictures bring me so much joy in looking at, and 2022 was a big year. It was the first year that we actually had in-person pride parades. We were at, out in Eco in Vegas as a team, as a leadership team, and I think that really, for me personally, I had been, talk to MJ every day, talk to Quarantina, talk to these people every day, and to meet them for the first time in Vegas last year after 3, 4, 5 years of talking with them online, it really brought us together in new ways. And
it was a ton of fun. I do remember having to be like, okay, where are those shoes though? Because I don't think I've put real shoes on in quite some time.
I mean, packing was a challenge.
Yes.
I think it's valid, and I think so Pride parades. We were at first event in Boston. My friend Irene. I mean, just making sure that we were taking full advantage of those connection points. First event was huge, and I think just that connection with our trans and non-binary community and having it be at a conference that has been a fixture for that community for so many years, and I think just continuing that is so important. Yeah. And so 2022, huge year. 2023 is shaping up to be even better. And I think we really were looking not only to continue what was working and find that balance, but just have fun and create space. And I think that's what our charge always is.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway that you had there, right? We showed those kind of two divergent slides, right, where we're fully 100% remote, and then we're obviously, back here now today. But we haven't stopped with that virtual element either, right? I mean, we're continuing to do the things that we started back in 2020. So continuing to engage those folks who are remote or are maybe not fully back into the office, right? So really trying to nail those.
I think just to add one point in there, right? So we wanted to make sure that all of the team members that had joined the ERG or had become more active within the ERG didn't get left behind now that we were moving to a new work model, right? We wanted them to still be able to be engaged and continue to grow and take on leadership positions within the teams. If we just dove right back into the way that things used to be before we had been remote, then we would have lost all of what we had learned and all of that great engagement and membership growth.
We had a great point, and I think after COVID, we saw a 44% increase with our membership, and I think not that it was all about the lip sync battles or the Zoom dance parties. I mean, it could have been, but I think just to show that people cared and people were having fun. And we have 13 ERGs at Dell, and we had so many ERGs that wanted to participate in the lip sync battles. They've hosted their own dance parties, and they still do. They have, we have a resident DJ, DJ Paul, Quarantina DJs as well, and I think just seeing other ERGs that are taking best practices or things that we've done and rolling it out into their communities, I think is a sign that it resonated.
Yeah, and I'll give one more little plug before I hand it back over to Dan. As Linnea said, we did grow about 45% when we were remote. We were able to grow another 27% on top of that as we shifted to this new hybrid model. So we have more to do, get back, we've got another year to comp that, but we're excited about the continued growth.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Day numbers.
All right, Josh over there may have felt like he was in the boardroom, which is why I think he dressed up today. But we haven't heard much from you, Josh. So
Not yet. It's coming, I promise. You'll be stuck with me and you'll hope I'm done.
Let's talk about it, right? We talked about some of these feedback sessions and the different listening sessions and communication. Like, what have you got for us?
Yeah, so we actually, I've been kind of interlaid. I'm more so not the skates, but kind of helping keep the skates tied on. So you have MJ and Linnea who had done their listening tour round one, and so I had kind of helped support that a little bit, which we'll get to in the next slide. But before we get there, we actually got to send MJ and Linnea on a round tour, number two. So do you want to talk a little bit about round two, and then I can segue.
Round two, listening tour.
We
dusted it off.
Yeah, we got the charter bus outside took us around again. I think for us, really, this one was a focus on that pulse check, right? We've started to make change. Is it working? And I think for us, as we were going through those conversations, it was also about kind of taking our egos out of it, right? Just because we thought that was the change that we needed to make doesn't mean that it was the right call. And we had some really good conversations with our leadership team to say, hey, I know that we thought that this was the right path forward, but there are some serious challenges. is this still what we want to do? Are we still on the right path? And if the answer is no, that's okay. We can figure this out together. But what we got back was, we do still agree with the vision. We are just have some obstacles that we need to overcome. And so as we listened to that feedback, we said, okay, change strategy, right? The rollerblades. We need to take urgent action. We need to remove those obstacles, right? And that's really where the communication strategy came in, was because not only did we need to make sure that we had a strategy to communicate our wins, but also to take action on some of the problems. For us, the number one thing that was challenging our progress was recruiting. We had a lot of people that were actively involved, and because everything seemed to be running so smoothly, we assumed that it was just being done behind the scenes magically in
We're at
Disney
Disney,
World,
yeah, I
right?
was
The
gonna say, it feels
magic
very on
behind the
beat.
scenes. But the reality was we needed more people to be involved, and in order for us to be able to do that, we really needed to engage our broader audience.
Which is where I came in. So we actually, before I tell you how I got to use and learn how to use the roller skates and hold this situation, I'm actually going to talk and do a bit of a flashback to the pandemic from my perspective, because I didn't have, that was their problem. When the pandemic started, for me, I had just started coming on as a North America comms lead, and so I had just started getting involved in Pride, and then everything was kind of gone, like they had mentioned. And so I thought the best way to fix that would be to make a weekly newsletter, which we ended up calling the Rainbow Reader. And in this weekly newsletter, basically, we have a brief intro, kind of, assessing the week, whether it was closer to Black Friday and we're like, wow, we made it out alive, or if it was like, it was Pride, woo! And then the next section, which you can kind of see, it's a very small one from my perspective. It's not from yours, that's great. But we have another section, which is things you might have missed. So it's about 4 to 5 news stories. I try to keep them positive based, because you all can turn on the news and see a bunch of horrible things. So I try to find positive queer news stories, things you might need to know, queer ancestors, things happening at Dell, and kind of truncate them down to a little sentence and pass those along. Something quick and easy and fun you can read on a Friday. And then following that, there's another section which we talk about events, and those can be internal Pride events, other ERG events, internal Dell events that we've been told we have to promote sometimes, or even sometimes external events that other organizations are putting on that relate to our community, which has all been really helpful. And then under that, we have a section which you can't see obviously here. It's a blue section. We call it the Rainbow Connection. It is in no way related to a green frog that happens to be owned by the company that we're sitting at right now. And in that section, I would keep as kind of a generic call for action, whether it be we need volunteers, or if we need, another ERG needed pictures or something.
And we love that section.
We
I
do.
was gonna
We
say,
didn't
that might
always
be
love
the
that
favorite.
section, but it is the new favorite section. And then below that was the end of the rainbow, which is just a section where I would share my thoughts about the week. People got to know a little bit more about me and my life. Since I was just sending them an email every week, I felt they should probably know who I am. And I also share a fun little fact, like for today, just FYI, it is Chocolate Milkshake Day, National Chocolate Milkshake Day, or National Video Game Day, if that's more your speed. So be sure to celebrate as you can. So this newsletter was going out every week. And as we got to the problem of needing more volunteers, I kind of pulled up the old forms that we had sent out and collected names, and found out that the issue we were running into is that we were getting people to volunteer, but there was kind of a break in the chain, if you would, and all these volunteer leads were funneling out into the nothingness. And so I went to MJ and Linnea and was like, hey, I need to do this again, but now we need to do something with all the people that are volunteering. And so we did that the first time, and they started kind of following up with people, and we were starting to be able to fit people into places, but then we found out there was another issue. As you all know, ERGs can be a lot of work, and not everyone has the same amount of time. Not everyone can sit and write a newsletter during the week. I don't always recommend weekly if you're going to emulate this, just FYI, but we can talk about that after this. But what we found is we needed to tweak the form and put some expectations. So that's the second bullet point there. We had the call for help, and now we needed to get specific. Okay, how much time do you have to give us? Do you have 1 hour a week? Do you have 1 hour a month? Do you have no projects and you have a whole 4 hours every day? Something, whatever you've got, we can use, and that helped them then kind of staff up and fill out people. And as you can see, we went from having, I think it was 20 people on our leadership call for North America to being able to fill out all of our pillars and our regions and our chapters. So now we're 50 plus people full of all these volunteers who are there to help. But like, we had such an amazing response, and we got really specific to help kind of get people on board. And you can see some of the metrics. The readers help drive a lot of membership. We've done a lot of newsletters. And it gets seen by a lot of people. And the nice thing is like using those change management tools, we've kind of been able to test. And so this section, the Rainbow Connection, where we did find all our volunteers, we listened to my readership, if you would, and found out that they want to hear more from our pillars. So they want to know, like, what's Family Pride doing? What's the Trans Task Force doing? How can I get more involved in, like, the Pride Book Club and anything like that? So we've kind of repurposed that section now that we have kind of staffed up. And we're using it to expand into more so what our users are asking and help making those changes. And we adjust as we go and learning and growing. And as such, we have now kind of been able to take the reader global, if you would. So we now have a once monthly global newsletter that goes out that talks to all our regions. It kind of helps bring us together from an ERG perspective. I obviously am the North America comms lead, and I'm also the global comms lead at the moment. So if anyone wants to, I'm also looking for an EMEA comms lead. But basically what we've been able to do is take this, and it's connected our ERG from a virtual perspective even closer, because obviously North America and EMEA or APJC or LATAM, we're kind of far apart. But having a global reader helped us connect more. And then we've also gotten it started in the region. So I have a Rainbow reader in Australia, New Zealand. We have a Rainbow reader in LATAM. We actually just had someone sign up for APJC, so they are getting that started as well. And our comms team has grown from just me to now 10 plus people, which everyone at the company is breathing a sigh of relief because it's a lot for me every single week. So it's been really, really nice to be able to use these change management tools and like learn and grow from just sending out invites about dance parties and getting all the feedback to a really thriving leadership team that's really able to drive and help move things forward.
And I think if you're like me and our whole panel here, I'm sure, then you get a lot of emails, right, in the week. The Rainbow Reader is never missed. That is always read. It's read first whenever it comes out on a Friday. Shameless plug, hopefully, fingers crossed. Josh maybe back here next year, specifically talking about a communication best practices.
Yes, yes. And spoiler alert, the Rainbow Reader is exactly how I talk. I do not filter it, I don't change it. There's no LMLS format. Like, it's just you get what you get.
True.
I have said this to you so many times. I'm reading it, and it is in Josh's voice. It's an audiobook. He's reading it to me.
There's no filter, and it's amazing they let me send an email to like 6,000 people.
But I think it's also become a tool for folks who don't know about Pride and who I can forward it to so many people, and just the reaction, the response, the fact that they're like, wow, y'all are doing so many things. And I think that it's such a good snapshot to do it. And one other thing, that when we were kind of going through the recruitment tour, we specifically asked folks, what are you passionate about? What skills do you hope to gain from getting involved? And so when MJ and I would then go and meet with them, we wanted to make sure that we were sharing what the opportunities were, but also aligning them to things that gave them that.
Yeah, brought them energy.
Yeah, brought them
right?
energy,
Yeah.
brought them life, sparked joy, I think you said.
And a lot of them are here today.
I mean,
from new recruits to out and equal
I
within
feel
a year,
like
right?
I cannot, I have to just, I've said it so many times, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the leadership team inspires me every day. The commitment that everyone has to creating a safe space, creating opportunity that we can bring our authentic selves to work, and the passion and the drive, it is a privilege to work with this group. And I think that for me, a differentiator for being at Dell. And this team just is so committed to working to make sure that we are all seen, heard, and can thrive.
That's awesome. Linnea, thank you for that. That's a great place to pause for just a minute here. We do want to open up, at least to everybody who's here, for any questions that might come up, either about our communication strategy, change management, anything that may have popped up. We have a couple of mics here, and then hopefully we've got some time at the end for another special guest.
Hi, I'm Bob Short with Cisco Systems, and I've got a question about surveys. We get surveys a lot in all areas of our life, and I think getting that feedback loop is very important, but getting the responses and how effective are you with surveys, or are there other methods that you could use?
I think it's a great question. I mean, survey fatigue is real. I think that we like it, and it's something that is an email that often people could ignore. And I think we've used it in a few different ways as far as getting feedback. We did sort of initial surveys, but then we have a monthly sync with our leadership team where they can share in that kind of a forum. So leveraging the surveys when we can, when it's appropriate, or when we think we'll get a good response rate, but then the in-person.
Yeah, and sometimes the
feedback
survey
as
is
well.
not the right answer. I think it depends on the engagement and the audience breadth that you need to address, because we wouldn't have been able to have the directional or strategic discussions that we needed to through just a survey. We needed to sit down and kind of hash it out for an hour. And we scheduled workshops, right? We had multi-hour workshops where we just went through problem statements and we brainstormed together. So a survey wouldn't have created that open dialogue. But as we were saying with our recruiting tour, we needed to approach a broad audience quickly. And we've used that lever then.
Also, people love free things.
Yeah, I was going to say, throw some swag, and also, depending on the survey ask, partner with other ERGs to help with the spread, right? You know, we have 13 ERGs at Dell. We do so many cross-ERG events. If you need feedback beyond your Pride community, if you want to get information outside of, you know, the chosen family of LGBTQIA, I think finding other leaders with other ERGs to help with that, working with your CD&I team to help make those matches as well is I think really important.
Yeah, I think we had another question in the front. Unless that was exactly your question.
Right here. Okay.
Which one?
Thank you. Yeah, my question was regarding, you mentioned on your iceberg that you sometimes face this challenge of celebrating quick wins, or like celebrating too quickly and not identifying what will be like a proper win. But I don't think we define what is a quick win, because sometimes, as well as co-leader of my proper ERG back at my company, we did tend to do like a lot of events, and we do like similar things as well to engage people. You know, you have your lip sync battles, and you have like a lot of things like that. But sometimes when we have these events, or well, not exactly the engagement ones, but the education ones, on the other things that we do to make the regular employee more aware of like the LGBTQ issues and everything that we need. What do you mean by like not celebrating a quick win? How do we define our end goal?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking. I'll clarify. I think it's about finding balance between quick wins and the long-term vision. And so as an example for us, we do want to celebrate those quick wins. That's what keeps the momentum going. You know that you're making progress. So as an example, when we got our new, co-lead for our ally network, we wanted to tell people about it, right? And so we did quick bios, we sent it in the reader, and we said, hey, welcome your new co-lead, and these are your folks. If you want to get involved, get involved. We wanted to celebrate that. But if we said, hey, we've already finished our journey, we've recruited everybody, we're done, pack it up, we wouldn't have been paying attention to some of the obstacles that we had still to overcome. Yeah.
And you're not going to you're going to shout out your dog by name, but you're not going to shout out Lauren by name. I mean, let me.
And Taylor.
And Taylor.
Rupert did get like 4 shout-outs. I'm so sorry.
It's written in his
He's a
contract.
very popular dog.
All right, we got time for just a couple more questions here.
I see one kind of in the middle there. Yeah, the lights.
Keep your hand up.
Yeah.
Whichever.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Molly Dickenzie, and I'm from UBS. I was curious, when you talked about earlier on when you were working on moving from the local to regional model, you mentioned how some areas were doing a bit better, some were struggling more. I'd be curious to hear, how did you gauge that? You know, what did you look at? How did you decide who was doing well, who had things to learn from, who could use a little more support?
Yeah, I'll start. You can jump
Sure,
in.
yeah.
You know, I tend to be the numbers one. We started with the data, right?
Yeah.
So we were able to track our membership, we're able to track our engagement, and we're able to see that trending over time. And so we were able to look at some of our chapters and say, hey, this chapter went from X to Y. And when we talk to those leaders, it sounds like we have a good idea of what has happened. But in other news, we're talking with others and they're like, we're so excited, we just keep getting more and more and more engagement.
I think, I mean, data gave us such a good starting point, and then we filled it in by having the conversations,
Yep.
right? So we had the conversations. Those two, that combo is powerful, and I think that that was instrumental in either confirming or learning where we had gaps and where we needed to fill them.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's well said.
Yeah.
I think we can do one more.
One more question,
Yeah.
maybe? Yeah.
The wheelchair over there. Thanks.
Hi, I'm
Let's
going
see
to
that.
throw you a curveball a little bit here. Deborah McCallum, I am with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm president of the VA ERG, first ERG that the Department of Veterans Affairs has ever had. And this, you may or may not know, but I'm interested to hear your feedback. When you're talking about a federal government ERG, you got a little more you got to deal with than when you're talking about private sector. I mean, you know, we have statutes, we have regulations, we have policy, we have political appointees, all of which play into the effectiveness of an ERG. From someone who's not a part of that organization, I'm trying to look from an outside perspective in. You know, how do we have obstacles sometimes that are created by things over which we have no control. Yeah. And that has been something we found. We have a lot of good ideas, and then some political appointee raises their ugly head up and smacks us back down. Or, you know, you have to consider the political climate. We've got competing, you know, parties and so forth. So I'm just interested in what insight you would give to a federal government ERG to help get around those things.
Yeah, it's, and thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your service. I think for us, you know, one of the things that, and the reason we named the workshop as we did, Off the Beaten Path, is that sometimes we have to take a path that wasn't already set for us, right? And although you may have unique obstacles in the steps that are required to get there, I think challenging in order to make progress is always worthwhile. And if you're able to overcome those obstacles, multiple though they may be, you should still be chasing that same vision, but also using similar tools to get there.
Yeah.
Yes,
yes, there's that
an
key
important
piece
step.
as well.
And
We can definitely talk to you here after as well. We'd love to follow up on that here just a little bit more.
Yep.
I do think, you know, I think we've got time for just one more,
I think
couple
we
of
have-
minutes here.
yeah, I think
We got one more?
Yeah, we do have
Yeah, we have
one more
one
right
more
here.
question.
This-
Alrighty, hey, I'm Quarantina.
Hey, can
So,
you come up here? Can you come? You're right in the light. Can you come up here? Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, why don't you come on up,
okay,
Valentina?
sure.
people
You
need to
talked about 5 steps, but I think you're missing a few steps, if I can.
Yes, please.
please.
When the night's here, I don't do tears, baby, no chill. smelling the diamonds on my face. I still keep the party going up one hit out of place. You don't hear me tears are flowing like atoms on my face. I still keep the party going up one hit out of place. Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart can be burning, but you won't see it on my face. Watch me dance, dance the night away. I'll still keep the party running out one hit out of place. When my heart breaks, when my world shakes, I feel alive, I feel alive. I don't play it safe, don't you know about me? I could dance, I could dance, I could dance tonight.
When in doubt, get yourself a Quarantina. I mean, there's no better way to end. Thank you. We appreciate it. We love talking about this. I mean, Linnea, MJ, Josh, thank you so much for sharing kind of some of those insights.
And thank you to you all for
Yeah,
coming
thanks.
and joining us in the
Yes.
Listening and
discussion.
listening.
Yes. We'll be here for a little bit afterwards, so if anybody wants to come hang out, we're happy to do so. But thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.